what's different about retro games? You know, as in what makes them more appealing in some ways than, say, a modern game?
I think a lot of it is definitely the nostalgia factor, just the kind of things that you grew up with. But I also think with a lot of older games, other than the obvious, they're just, they work. You put a cartridge in the system, you turn it on, it shows up on the TV. There's no updates or registering or creating accounts or anything to hop into a game.
That's actually my problem with the Wii U, is it's not that way anymore. That thing's complicated.
Yep. Yeah, and it was a lot more simple with 2, 6, or 8 buttons on a controller maximum back then versus everything that they have now.
Yeah, there's some stuff I can't actually do on modern games because of the nerve damage. It's actually quite frustrating, but whatever. I've decided it's okay if I suck at everything that I don't have muscle memory for.
Have you seen the Xbox Adaptive Controller? That's actually such a unique and such a great thing that they're doing for the community.
No, I haven't. I can look it up right quick and see. I've had a lot of damage done to me over the years, and there's some things I can do, and there's some things I can't do, and that might be interesting.
Yeah, whoever thought of it, honestly, it's fantastic. They finally opened up that accessibility to a lot of people.
That's cool. I'm going to look into that and see more about it.
It's definitely worth checking out, yeah. It's such a great idea.
There is something about retro games that I've always thought was interesting, and that's atmosphere. I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes they seem to have a little bit more atmosphere than a new game, even with the more primitive sounding graphics.
A lot of them really can. They, because the graphics were primitive, they really had to pull you in and kind of encapsulate the mood that they were going for. It wasn't just obvious on the screen in front of you. They really had to try and work for it.
As a result, you ended up having to use your imagination a lot more, I think.
Especially the earlier games, you definitely filled in a lot of the blanks. Back in the day when a manual could be a literal novel to accompany the game, and you just used that to envision what you were playing.
That was fun. I wish games still came with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Static cling film to your TV to give you the color or the field of the tennis court, what have you.
Yeah, the Magnavox was really good for that.
Yep.
That thing, my dad used to run AV store. It's funny because he still can't operate so much as a VCR. He used to run an AV store when that thing was there, and he was a Magnavox dealer, and he hated video games for his entire life after that. He's 85 years old now and still thinks it's Pong because he thought that was the dumbest thing ever invented.
Oh no.
Even I look at it and I wonder, how did this turn into an industry?
Yeah, as I say, the Odyssey really, the originator for the most part of it all. It's just so simplistic and basic, but somehow the genesis of what we have now.
To me, I had one for a little while, and it was incredibly frustrating. You really got to get creative with that thing. You better have an imagination or get lit or something.
I have seen some of the parts included, and especially the original, the first Magnavox Odyssey, and you've got scorecards, a board game with pieces, you've got dice, chips, and everything that you're basically just playing the game, and the TV is like a whiteboard or a chalkboard in the background, really.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we were just talking about in a way is graphics. And one thing I've noticed, have you ever heard of this is going to be a little more computer oriented, but have you ever heard of the 3D game creation system, the pie in the sky thing?
It does not sound familiar now.
This was a big thing on Sega, Nintendo, all this stuff back then, is the idea of a 3D game, or especially a nighttime environment. I don't think a modern game ever has the feel of being outside at night like a game from the early 90s does.
I can kind of see that, actually. There's a lot that are almost like a night filter in a movie. It's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's a little eerie, like the trees and the sprites and stuff, or, they just went a couple of shades darker, but everything else is dark and almost black in the sky and stuff. That Pie in the Sky engine was cool. Doom kind of took it farther, but the other stuff that was kind of more primitive at the time, they had to work at it, and it really fit. Daggerfall is a prime example. Yeah, I think another one was, if you look up a game called Lethal Tender, and I think you'll recognize some of what I'm talking about, even with console games as far as that goes.
Yeah, looking at that now, I like how the distance is done. You have the horizon, but it's black beyond that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
It does really just immediately just make the point that it is dark out nighttime.
Yeah, I think part of it's probably the limited color palette. I've noticed the same thing in Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghost and Goblins, but which one was that?
Either, yeah.
Yeah, that one had a lot of night stuff, and it kind of had that set effect where you see a lot of stuff going on. I'm not sure if that was my favorite game in the world, but that had some juice too, as far as just getting used to the where you are and what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure every single part of that game takes place at night. It's always dark out in both of them, all of them maybe.
Yeah, it's a bitch of a game too. That people say, "Oh, it's friggin' Dark Souls." Yeah, play that and play the original Mega Man, then come back and talk. You know.
Yeah, it's a game that's famous for being hard long before Dark Souls, and once you beat it, you get to start over and beat it again.
Oh my God, getting hit and your armor getting knocked off.
Yeah, that's a great game. I have both the NES Ghouls and Ghosts and the Super Nintendo Super Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, I always get that stuff mixed up. Like some of the PC titles, I remember a game called Halloween Harry, but it was called something else where they had to... Okay, there was a game that was available on Sega. You may or may not have played it. Here in the U.S., it was called Corridor 7, I think, but it was called... No, it wasn't. It was called Corporation, or was it Corridor 7 in the same damn game? It was something like a 3D game called Corporation. It was partially an RPG.
Yeah, I don't think I know that one.
You should be able to find it under Corporation. It's a pretty detailed game, which kind of drags me back to the console questions. You did mention that you really like the NES, but do you have like some console that really just feels right to you? That's even if 2 or 3 games are really good enough for it to be your favorite. Do you have one like that, or is it still the NES?
It's a tough choice between the NES and the Super Nintendo. I grew up with both. I've played a lot. For some reason, even though it has more buttons, I find the Super Nintendo to be almost more intuitive. The way your hand kind of lies on the buttons and you just kind of feel everything, and just games are so easy to just pick up. And NES games were a little more cryptic. There was a little more trial, error, had to read the manual. Super Nintendo was pick up the controller and play.
That is true. I remember that. At the time, I didn't own a Super Nintendo. I went Sega, so I was that guy. But I do remember playing the SNES or SNES, whatever people, Super Nintendo. And I did notice that. It was kind of easier to hold. They were more intuitive. In general, it kind of came naturally to hand. The NES, even with its own games, it kind of felt at times like, wouldn't it be nice if I had a little more control, or this thing wasn't digging into my hands, or if it was a little different shape?
Yeah, definitely. The controller, as nostalgic as it is unpleasant to hold. Concave buttons, right angles on the edges, just it does hurt.
Yeah, a little small too. I think though the what it comes down to is it was the first major release concept of a controller that wasn't a joystick at the time, and I think it was the release of that allowed games that we have today. Can you imagine trying to play if joysticks had stuck around for conventional games? I think that would be pretty tough.
It absolutely, yeah. It would not be the huge hobby that it is nowadays if we were still using joysticks with even like 1, 2, or 3 buttons. The D-pad especially really changed things.
That's true. That is definitely true. I remember back in the day, people were playing Doom with joysticks and stuff. That John Romero ad where he was holding the joystick up, I think he actually probably used that thing once or twice. And I remember watching people thinking, how in the hell do you do that? And I have trouble with them on the controller, but it was a heck of a lot easier with the keyboard. But there were times like the Atari and stuff where they brought some games out that they were not really working with the joystick, I didn't think.
Well, especially Atari. I mean, Atari had 3 different controllers available for every system at any given time. You had the joysticks, you had the paddle controllers, you had the keyboard input controller for the 2600.
That makes me wonder what the hell they were thinking with the Jaguar. That's like 15, 20 years out of date or something like, well, no, not at that time. It's pretty old. So maybe at least 10 years out of date. What did they intend to do with those buttons in the middle of that thing?
You know, there's really nothing that needed to have that. It just didn't make sense. There's nothing you couldn't navigate with an up, down, left, right that you wouldn't need other buttons, or you would need other buttons for. Otherwise, I mean, it has, from what I've seen, I've never held one. It seems to have a pretty ergonomic design compared to modern controllers. It flares out a little bit, like it gives a place to cradle your hands, and then it just has that bone pad in the middle for some reason.
I remember playing one that somebody else had when I was in the military. Bugger kept that thing. He loved it. And I played the quintessential game for it, Aliens vs. Predator. And I did like the controller, and it didn't suffer the problem that my AV system is primarily powered by an Xbox One now. And one thing I'll tell you about Xbox controllers as far as I'm concerned, maybe it's just my nerve damage, I don't know, those damn things are hard to pick up off of a slick table.
No, you're not wrong. you have to scoop them from like the center. That's absolutely true.
That's why I turned around, and when they came out with that Elite controller, I bought one to replace all mine, 3 of them, because I was like, oh, this is so much. At least I can pick it up. That's why I bought it. And then I go back to the other ones, and I'm like, ooh, those are mushy compared to the Elite. Holy crap, they weren't messing around. And you look inside it, in the battery cover, it says "Hello from Redmond" in it.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty cool, that little Easter egg there. And it kind of makes me want to ask, what did get... Now, there's a few different answers to this, obviously, but what did get you into retro games? Did you just never stop playing them, or realize they were fun, or like you said, the nostalgia factor was everything?
It's a little bit of everything. I really did never stop playing. I grew up with an NES and a Sega Genesis. I had a Super Nintendo that, I had for a long time until my mother ended up trading. Upset. I was upset as a kid, but like looking back, it was like, oh yeah, we were poor. That makes sense, and I don't feel so bad about it anymore.
Yeah, that reminds me of my mom selling my bicycle when I was a kid. She was like, oh yeah, but you got a new one. No, I didn't want a new one. I like that one. What the hell?
Yeah.
I think there's some I never stopped playing, and I want to bring one back and put it back together. I mentioned it before, is the Sega CD.
Oh no, absolutely. That's one of the systems I grew up with.
I know when it came out, I remember what I was eating. I was eating one of these toffee bar things. I was just in an empty room, plywood floor, just... I grew up strange. And the Q sound, and I've actually tried to buy that damn company a little while back. The Q sound with the speakers, and then firing up, of all things, that game it came with, Sewer Shark.
Yep, they all did. It was the packet title.
That was a little more fun than it should have been, I think.
I was terrible at it as a kid, but I would play it almost every single day.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I heard "crash and burn, man," or whatever they said. That's with the Q sound, it was amazing, which is still, in my opinion, the best simulated surround sound ever done. But then I got a few things. The first one I got, of course, that really blew my mind was Sonic CD. We all know well, maybe not anybody listening, but we know that the Sega CD had a limited color palette. It didn't expand from the actual Sega Genesis or Mega Drive or Super, whichever one, that one anyway. Nevertheless, what they managed to do with it, they knew how to use that space, to increase the music quality, the sound quality, to add more data, more details. Even if they couldn't really improve the graphics all that much, like, it was such a better experience, I think. But some people don't agree. Some people say Sonic CD kind of wasn't what it needed to be.
It wasn't a great successor to the cartridge games, and I think that's what people look at immediately. But technically, the game was really good. It was an excellent, 2D platformer built on a CD system with excellent audio.
I think it's amazing they managed to put those games in cache off of that CD back then. Like, I don't know how much cache that thing had, how much data it was available to store, how much it had to stream, but I think it's impressive it even worked.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I knew the PlayStation could cache at one point, but I've never looked into the Sega CD.
Considering the year and what computer hardware could do at the time, you look at it and you're like, maybe this thing was a little more advanced than people thought. And then something like Lunar comes out and you look at it and you're just, wait a minute, this just changed everything. Holy crap.
I've not played that one yet. I've only seen it played.
Lunar the Silver Star will change. All right, I will tell you this. Rotate your saves. That game, you can fuck yourself. Oh my God, it's bad. I just got so mad one time because I got to a point where I could not complete the game with the save. I had to start over. But the storyline, if it hadn't have been for Lunar, Final Fantasy never would have become what it did. That was the first real graphically intensive, story-driven JRPG to hit the market.
Okay.
And it's still good. Honestly, the PlayStation version is probably better because they, increased color palette and stuff like that. But there is something about playing it on the original Sega CD.
Yeah, it is definitely still popular and therefore still very expensive. So I'm not surprised.
Oh, I haven't even looked. I imagine that is pretty expensive. Do you have any specific games that you were really intense on the Sega CD?
Growing up, I owned 3 games for the CD. I had Sewer Shark, Corpse Killer, and Jurassic Park. I think I rented Power Rangers, but I don't think I owned it.
Jurassic Park? I would still play that. I'm actually, when I get it back running, I'm going to play that again. Like that, added, to me anyway, it felt like it added so much to the movie, to the universe. I don't know, maybe if I played it now, I'd be like, this sucks, but at the time, I really got a kick out of it.
No, it's still good. Jurassic Park is the earliest movie I can remember seeing in theaters, so I've always loved it. The game is probably what got me into point-and-click adventures to begin with, and like you said, it expanded so much. You were exploring the park, and you were seeing like some of the events that happened, and some events that you didn't get to see in the movie, and it was the first real like extended universe kind of stuff that I ever got to experience.
Yeah, and they did a really good job. I remember not knowing exactly what the hell I was supposed to be doing and stuff.
I never knew.
I don't think I ever beat it, but after that, I think it was the same thing with me. That was the first time I really bothered with that, the point and click type stuff. And then after that, yeah, I got Monkey Island for the Sega CD, and that is the first system I played that game on, and I still think it's one of the better versions.
Fun fact, me too, except I picked up the limited run games free print of it last year.
Oh, really? Did they do a really good job of it?
As far as I can tell, it's excellent. The cases are beautiful, the manual's beautiful, the cover art on it looks original, the gameplay is just fine from what I can tell.
I did not know they re-released that. No, I mean, you know, it's re-released constantly, but I did not know Limited Run actually went full on with it.
Yeah, it's a proper Sega CD version that you can only play on the Sega CD. Has the original jewel case and everything.
Holy crap, it's a shame it's a limited run. I'd buy one of those.
Yeah, they sold out quick. I was lucky to get one. I think they were probably going within 2 or 3 hours after launch. You know, I don't do this often, but I was one of those people that was sitting there refreshing the page waiting to get a copy.
There's a couple of things I've done with that. I've done where I've really gone out of my way to get something. The first Doom 26, I wish I could get the OG helmet. I got the super special edition of that. And when Myst had its 25th anniversary and they brought out the book where you open it, it's got the LCD screen in it and all that stuff.
Yep.
I went ape shit over that. I just bought the hell out of it. I don't think I've ever done any other... Oh, Final Fantasy X. I bought the limited edition of that because I think that's the greatest romantic tragedy ever told, if not the greatest story. But unfortunately, you got to play through it, so you can't tell it to everybody. What would be your favorite role-playing experience? Not necessarily the best, but the one you remember the most that impacted you the most on any system, going back all the way to whenever the hell the Odyssey came out, 78, 79 or something?
It was actually funny enough thinking about this earlier today because it was International Video Game Day. I think my first experience really playing any sort of RPG was for the Game Boy. It was Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
I don't think I played that.
It's still one of my all-time favorites. It was, my first Zelda. We had Zelda 2, but not 1 for some reason. And jumping into Zelda 2 in the NES era, why am I going from this tiny weird map to side scroller? I didn't understand it. And I couldn't play it. It made no sense to me as a child.
When I got the second Zelda, I got really confused by that. I was not sure what the heck I was doing. The first I played the hell out of, I'm talking about the straight NES version. The first I played the immortal hell out of, but the second I couldn't wrap my brain around it for some reason. I don't know, it was the side-scrolly one, whichever one.
Yep, that's Adventures of Link, Zelda 2. It made no sense to me either. I think a lot of people really felt that way.
Yeah, somehow though it kind of got remembered really well recently, like Final Fantasy VII or Ocarina. I think it's just because maybe it was the first one some people played. I don't know, but I think that maybe I should give it another shot. Maybe now's a good time to just try it again.
Yeah, I finally did sit down and play a lot of it years later on my 3DS when it became available, and it was it's a lot more enjoyable now that I kind of understand what to do and where the game sits within the canon of things and such.
I have a lot of trouble following it because I don't think I've ever played any more Zelda games. I have a lot of trouble following the damn canon on that. It gets confusing. It's almost as bad as Sonic the Hedgehog.
Officially, the Zelda canon goes in a circle, so it makes no sense. It really doesn't.
Sounds like an interesting concept, but I don't see any way to follow it then. I know Sonic, and I have never found it. I saw an anime about Sonic that came out. I saw it in a hotel. And I know there's some anime you can watch on YouTube and stuff, and it's pretty cool, but this was some heavy shit. And I started looking into what actually the story of that is. And holy crap, Sonic's got a really dark story.
Yes. All of the wildlife is slowly being converted into like cybernetic or like robotic replacements because Dr. Robotnik basically hates every living thing and wants it to no longer be a living thing. It's a little messed up.
Yeah, I just didn't know how. I thought at first it was just like magic poof. He's got an animal that you can beat the robot and the animal comes out, but that's not what this dude was messed up.
I remember as a kid thinking like, why are there like bunnies and like, you know, chipmunks and stuff coming out of all of these monsters that I'm destroying? And you get a little bit older and you're like, oh.
It's like when you realize Pokemon is basically dogfighting and you just push it out of your mind.
It's worse than that, because the answer to the question that no one ever, the question is like, what do they eat? Like, what do people live off of? What do Pokemon live off of? The anime has like normal animals in it a couple of times, but the games and the anime both address that like slowpoke tails are a black market item as an aphrodisiac.
I know it's fucked up, but every time I hear more, I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, it's terrible. It was never meant to be thought of that deep, and they always have to fill in the gaps for the sake of continuity, and it just gets weirder.
I don't think there's any way for them to drag themselves out of that one. I just think it's probably a good thing that everybody seems to ignore it.
That's for the best. It's for children. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah. There's a few like that. I know Sonic surprised me. Pokemon surprised me. What was one of the other? There was another one that was really fun. Oh, it surprised me when I read the book. It's still one of my favorite experiences ever is Myst. The story behind that is so damn dark. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how dark that shit, how the puzzle, like, why are the puzzles on the island? This motherfucker was paranoid as hell, and he had every reason to be.
I played Myst at, like, friends' houses back in the day, but I never played, more than just a few minutes and never quite understood what I was doing at the time. I did manage to find a Myst trilogy box set.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's missing 3, so I'm going to get a replacement for that, but I do have 1 and 2 in there, and I've played a bit of 1, and I've started to kind of like understand it and get better. Tuesday, I'm going to set up and finish my Windows XP machine, and I plan on installing basically every game I have onto that thing at that point, including Myst 1 and 2.
I wonder, Riven is freaking epically great. Like even today, it looks gorgeous. I wonder, I might have some hard drive. I don't know if I'd even rely on the hard drives I've got. I've got stacks of them, but if I happen to stumble across any good, but you're going to need some hard drive space.
Yes, right now it's got a 16 gig SSD in it that I'm going to use as the C drive. And then I think I have 3 or 4 platter hard drives that range from 160 to 500 gigabytes. And I know at least one of them has a problem, so I'm going to have to experiment and see what works.
I'll look through. I think I've got some that are probably okay. Maybe I've got some I can send you. It's the hard drives. When you get a box of hard drives, them things are heavy. It may as well be a solid block of metal.
I mean, they practically are. They're a vacuum sealed block of metal.
Yeah, I hate having to test them too. Oh my God, that's a pain in the ass. But you need them to build these retro rigs like the 5150s and stuff that I do. The old IBMs. They get these gigantic hard drives. I mean, you can use a compact flash card, but everybody wants the hard drive. I'm like, I could put a fucking Sega CD in that hole, and you want this hard drive? I find all these damn brackets, and half the time I'm like, what the fuck is this for? Like, what could you even use this for? It's always some weird crap, and I'm like, I didn't even know that, like the DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation stuff. I didn't even know what that was. I actually sold a few of those keyboards for dirt cheap because I was like, it's just some bullshit digital brand. Who calls their stuff that? And then I found out it was a new standard. I look into it and I'm thinking, how did that not catch on?
I will say that's one thing I'm pretty good at is I tend to research and learn as much as I can about any new item I get.
You should have seen me looking at that, was it socket 413 motherboard or something, thinking, what goes in here?
I'm not even familiar with what that size would be.
Yeah, it's sad I have to look at it again. I think it was 413. I boxed. Oh no, I already shipped it to somebody. It was for the DEC Alpha processor, which they were trying to replace x86, which turned out to be a good idea, but just fell flat on its face, I guess.
Risk didn't last long. Power PC almost held out, but
Yeah, I was surprised that went out because that actually has some potential. That particular architecture really does kind of open the taps on what any kind of electronic device can do now.
yeah. Well, this is going to be super controversial, but ARM is going to replace everything. That's my opinion.
Is that risk-based?
Technically, yes. Acorn RISC something. I forget what ARM stands for. It is technically RISC-based. Yeah.
I think we do need a new standard, and I'm pretty sure those can be fairly easily adapted to run stuff we already run. You're probably right about that. x86 is kind of reaching a point where, maybe it's not what we need anymore. It's been around a very long time.
It has. There's only so much more you can add to it. Whereas like ARM-based, they've got built-in modems. They've got built-in, cellular modem. They've got built-in FM radio. They've got built-in like RAM cache and management. They're exceeding what x86 is capable of in every way except just raw output.
Yeah, and with further development, they could definitely do that. Especially because right now they're so small. If they pull those things to the size of the ICs we're using or the microprocessors we're using now, there's no telling what the hell those things could pull off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more advanced they get and everything, they're going to catch up and eventually surpass x86.
I feel like you're probably right on that. I know, yeah, that's going to be a controversial thing in general, but I think you're probably right on that. We are hitting the limits on x86, especially when you take some of this old stuff. You'd be surprised. One of the topics I have up here about retro games is programming efficiency. People actually cared because they had so little to work with, and now we've got mouse drivers that should be 16 kilobytes, but 350 megabytes for some reason.
Yep, yes. Well, first of all, they're probably siphoning off any sort of user metadata they can. That's part of the reason they're so big. Yeah, but outside of that, yes. One of the best things ever is you look at a game like the original Pokemon Red and Blue, and they fit that in well under a megabyte, that whole game.
Yeah, and I wish people did that. I think my programmer, I don't know if he died or what, but he disappeared and that was it. Pretty sure he died. But I was on that guy, and every programmer I hire, I'll come back and I'll say, what's with these kilobytes? What's with these lines of code? You can do better than that. And in the end, the last thing we worked on, I got a fully animated graphical user interface in 16 kilobytes and fit Beethoven's Ninth on a 360K 5 1/4 floppy disk 71 times. And I said, this is what efficiency is, man. Pretend you only have 640K, because technically that's right. That's all you need to do anything if you're clever.
Yes, people did more with what they had available because they simply had less available back then. I think now you can be sloppy because you could spare the space. It doesn't really matter.
That's the thing. I wonder what they could do if they weren't sloppy today. Like, what could they pull off? The whole can it run Crisis thing. Everything would have been able to run Crisis if they were that efficient.
Well, I think the antithesis of getting something done well is going to be the capitalistic side of it, where you have a budget, you have a deadline, game has to be out, make it work. Doesn't matter how big it is in a lot of these situations. I mean, people are going to buy Call of Duty even if it takes up half or a quarter of their hard drive space.
And I think that's a system that feeds itself back and forth, and that on one hand, the people are just going to buy it anyway. They keep demanding more and more and more, and then the companies are trying to deliver so that they can keep selling them, and in the end you just get junk piled on top of junk. Prime example, Skyrim. Just so much junk, or Fallout 4 is probably better. So much junk on top of junk on top of junk, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't work properly.
Yes. Fallout 4 is a great example because it's the latest iteration of the Gamebryo creation engine, whatever you want to call it. It's still the same thing. It's just all cobbled together, which is beautiful and brilliant in its own right. It's basically like using Fallout as an example. It's like keeping Dr. House alive for 200 years.
Yeah,
and it works, and it's amazing that it's still working and they can still manipulate it like that. But on the other hand, it's bad. It's done. Let it go.
The last time I forgot forgive them, and I'll still forgive them for this because of when they did it and what they had to do. A Unity version that just came out fixed it finally, and that's Daggerfall, and I'll forgive them that because it was 1996, and the depth of that world and how big it was, and the fact that it worked at all, I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine, I'll just keep reloading it. But the second they hit Morrowind, the world got a lot smaller. I started to think, you guys, you got to do better. You've got to do better than this, and the world kept shrinking.
It has, for sure. I started Elder Scrolls on Morrowind, and I skipped Oblivion. I didn't play that until after Skyrim. So after playing Skyrim, following Morrowind, which I had played all those years in between, was like, I'm at the edge of the map. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, that's true. I usually end up finding the edges, and I keep thinking, this is stupid. Finding the edge in Daggerfall, you may as well try and find it in Minecraft. And holy crap, the time quest, you got to think about how long it takes you to get somewhere and stuff, and it's still pretty easy to stay in time, but if you don't pay attention, it's going to be your ass in that game.
Yes.
That's one that I wish. Honestly, here's what I thought with Bethesda. When Oblivion came out, and this is kind of something that people say, don't say that, but damn it, it's true. Everybody in that game looked like a pineapple-eating Hawaiian, like a stereotypical, almost a racist drawing of a Hawaiian or something. And I'm thinking, why can't these people make people that look like people? I don't understand it. And then the users get a hold of it. It always looks good. And every character I make ends up looking like Adrian Paul for some reason, the guy that played Duncan MacLeod in the Highlander show.
Okay.
But I always thought, the second Oblivion came out, I said, all right, the graphics are good enough, and I still think they are. Take another realm, I don't care which one, Elsewhere, whatever, tack it onto the side of that and just keep building the game bigger, kind of like they did with World of Warcraft. And
yes.
Eventually we'll have all of Tamriel, but no, they got to release a new damn game every time, and it's not compatible.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a lot of speculation about Elder Scrolls 6, but it does seem to be multi-region. And I think, Bethesda has been experimenting a lot with online content. Elder Scrolls Online was successful. Fallout 76 took some time to find its place, but it's better now. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it's better now.
You gotta watch the Rags review of that. Rags' review, whether or not you like the guy, his review of Fallout 76 is epic. It is so epic the way he illustrated what the actual problem was there, the big issue behind it, and it wasn't unreliability or quests being weird or anything like that. It was the fact that he was illustrating how this is a multiplayer world and yet it feels alone and empty.
76, yes, it absolutely does. I bought it launch day, I bought the Centennial Edition and everything like that. I bought it for Xbox One because I had one at the time. Surprise, I rebought it on PC. I don't play a lot of online games. I don't interact with a lot of people online in that capacity. So for me that wasn't an issue. But because the original game had no NPCs, I was wandering around the wasteland by myself. It was just boring.
One of the ones I do like to this day, and Shad got me into it, Shadiversity, because I was like, if this Mormon's playing it, and he's such a sword guy and stuff, we're interested in a lot of the same stuff. It must have something going on. I heard it was really rated M kind of thing, and trust me, it is. I ain't never seen so many swinging dicks in my life. It's not bothersome. It's just as long as you don't mind seeing them, be good. That is an online game, but when you play it solo, it still works. It's still fun. Okay. It feels like that Conan movie in that it's empty, but it's empty in a Conan way. It's brilliant. Plus, it's like you get to build all kinds of crap, and you can set it up so you can get swamped by monsters or whatever. It's just Conan Exiles. It's worth playing.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. It's been recommended, and I've been meaning to get it, but I'm behind on everything all the time.
Yeah, that one right there is one that I wasn't sure about at first because I don't do that's why I was getting on it. I don't do the multiplayer thing too much. Like even in FPSs, if it's not a deathmatch, I'm not gonna mess with it because I'm a sucky team player. I'm Leroy Jenkins. I'm gonna run out there and start nutshotting everybody.